we've been through Unit 1, Unit 2, Unit 3, and here we are with addition and subtraction. So we're going to be working on that today. Something that we have done in the past with the units is the sessions, we have first talked about the math standards, and then at the end we get to the lesson. We're going to flip it this time, and we're going to focus on the lesson so that we can really get into exactly what you want to know about your classroom needs, and we can have those conversations about how we can support you more. So signing is at the end. That's per my boss's order. And you're going to gather, make sure you have 10 Unifix cubes of the same color, all the handouts, as well as the 10 frame work mat. And what you're going to see up here is not necessarily what you have to read, so don't be, I'm actually going to take it off the screen, because I'm going to take you through the lesson just like you will take the students through the lesson. And I don't want you to read the lesson beforehand. I want you to be able to have a chance to experience it. So as I said, we're working in the addition and subtraction unit. I want you to look at your materials that you have in front of you. Are these materials that you currently have within your classroom that you can find very easily? Yay, nay?
Yes.
Okay, great. The standard that we're going to focus on today is modeling subtraction to make 10. As we know, 10 is one of our benchmarks that we're looking and working towards with our kindergarten students. 5 as well as 10 are those major benchmarks that you want to consistently talk about, whether you're in the numbers unit, the shapes unit. You always want to use those 5 and 10 as a benchmark so your students are constantly manipulating and using numbers focused around that. So today we're going to use number 4 and 5 of those mathematical standards. Remember, we talked about those standards that are within all of your lesson plans. And number 4 is you're going to model with mathematics. You have your tools in front of you to model. And you're also going to talk with a partner about how you're using those tools to reach those benchmarks of 5 and 10. And I'll turn on this one because I do want you to see some of this. But we want our students to be able to compose the number 10. How many ways can they make the number 10? And they're going to do that through subtraction. But you know what essentially happens with subtraction? You get what as well when they work on subtraction? Addition. Exactly. So you're going to see the interchange of the student being able to use not only subtraction but addition and communicate their learning to a partner is very essential throughout this entire lesson. I don't want you to see that little part. I think you have to read that. Okay. So this is, and basically I essentially took what the lesson plan looks like and I just took the steps and put them on PowerPoint. And for me in my classroom, we all teach kindergarten. So you're not going to have this up on the board so the students can see this, but this is kind of my cheat sheet. All I do is just copy and paste it to PowerPoint. That makes my teaching a little bit easier. With the length of the lesson plans and the amount of things that you're teaching, you're not going to remember it. Remember in the past you just had one thing to teach for that day, one activity. Well, knowing that you have a lot of different activities embedded into one lesson, I think it's a little bit helpful to have a little cheat sheet for yourself as you're going through your lesson plan. So it's helped me a whole lot to do this. And like I said, your students may not see this, but you can have it on your computer just to help you. First, we want to make sure our students are able to communicate how well they have learned what we're working on. So in the past, and I say the past because it could be as early as August or today as well. But how do you feel that that your students are communicating in terms of math? Because we constantly have them talking during ELA. We constantly have them talking when we're in those thematic study units. But how do you feel they're communicating your math lessons? Think about it for a moment. And communicating effectively. Is somebody popcorn out? Go ahead, I see you with your aha moment. How do you feel like they communicate? When they're on the carpet, they're in their partnerships, or even whole group. What kind of math language do your students have?
Some do well and some struggle. And some can perform a task, but they have problems putting it in words of actually what they have done. So,
varying levels.
Exactly.
Right. Well, that's something to really highlight during this lesson because the student will have the opportunity to do it in multiple ways. They're going to have a chance to write it, draw it, have a journaling about it. They're going to even be able to communicate it via the manipulative. So it gives them an opportunity to have problem solving through many different ways. There is the worksheet attached, and I have that right here for you, and there's a link on there. The lesson that I'm doing is a model lesson that's on your unit plans on the APS SharePoint. So this is nothing top secret that you can't grab a hold of to yourself. Definitely feel free to go on there, upload it, and see how this lesson works for you. So the first thing your students are going to have is their Tower of 10. And I want you to act like your students. I want you to break them apart. And in your right hand, because we've already went through left and right, we went through our patterns with our shapes unit. In your right hand, record how many cubes you have. And they could have broken them apart, they could have picked a couple apart. And you're recording that on your sheet, right here where it says cubes. And you can record it with a number, and I'm going to try to have a teacher voice as well as the, professional development voice. But record whether you want to draw how many cubes you have, or you want to write the number of how many cubes you have. And you guys can actually go ahead and do that now. Sorry. And I know it's not going to take you guys as long to get to that next step. But then you're going to want to ask your students, how many more would it take to get to 10? Because now they have had a chance to break apart. Everybody has 10 in the classroom. How many more do you think it would take to get to 10? I'm sorry, on yours it has 5, but you use 5, as we said, or 10 as your benchmark. And you have that conversation piece with them. So we start off with 10, but essentially you'll start with your 5 cubes, and they have 2 over here and 3 over here. And you talk to them about what that looks like. And then have them do it over and over and over again. Because you want them to manipulate those numbers so that they just don't get in the habit of thinking 3 plus 2 equals 5. Or 2 plus 3 equals 5. You want them to see the different combinations. And this is a way for them to record their thinking. How many of us have a math journal, the composition notebook, and we say, that's your math journal. Everything you do for math is in that journal. And that's it. How many of you have done that, doing that, or? I know I've done that, where I have the composition book and I just feel like if it's not in that book, it's obsolete. But we have to get in the mindset of realizing that just like with language arts, we have different ways that our students could communicate their math ideas. At this point, turn to your neighbor and talk about another way that you can make 5 cubes. And you can do that. Remember, we're going to act like we're the 5 and 6-year-olds. Talk to your neighbor about what it would look like to make 5 cubes again.
That's one way. Okay. And then another way could be when she said, don't use 2 plus 3. 3 plus 2. You could use 5 plus 0. 3 plus 5. So that's another way. Okay. You think 5 plus 0 and 1 plus 4, 4 plus 1, 0 plus 5. So she said 2 plus 3. They know that. 2 plus 3 and 3 plus 2.
Now, the teacher has given up. One, two. Thank you. Now, the teacher has given the children a chance to show an example, talk about it, and brainstorm about other ways that they would be able to get to 5. You move on and do that with 10 as your benchmark. If you feel that your students are not ready to move on, the next step will be to show them multiple ways. And I would even show them, honestly. I would have a student who is able, student who may be struggling a little bit, to demonstrate over and over again and include the class in that discussion. Having that discussion is very meaningful during this time, and that's when we look for that math talk to come about. And this is where I really didn't want you to see it, but I wanted you to know this information. That's why it's so small. But good, better, best. And I talked about that struggling student, the student who may know it, who can model it, and that's what we're looking for. Teachers being able to communicate that as you're having those collaborative meetings, as you're talking to each other about, well, my students are here, here, and here. You're a good student. They'll be able to solve the problem by choosing one of the 3 criteria of modeling, whether it's drawing, writing it. Your better student will be able to solve the problem by choosing 2. The best student will be able to do all 3, modeling it, drawing it, and writing a number sentence. So all of you can think of a student that falls within those ranges. And I'm sorry it's not big. I try to just cut and paste rather than doing it all over again. But this is almost your rubric essentially. And you're always working toward this best student. But know that if the child falls within this category, it's okay, because they're able to do at least 2 of the ways of showing how to problem solve using base 10 as their guideline. And then the problem type that we just did was a join and combine problem. And these are different examples of what join and combining problems look like. And I know some people are like, what? Because in the past, we just knew addition is addition, subtraction is subtraction. But every addition problem is not the same. You're going to have some that have the number in the column that don't have the number, and then you have to add it on to another number, and then you get the sum. Some that give us a sum, and we're trying to figure it out. So you want to give them different types of problems to work so that you can see how much they're able to manipulate those numbers that have that 10 or that 5 as their benchmark.